Nice topic, man. We're just gonna go into a little review as far as dealing with, who are the Israelites. So, of course, you know, we know that the Bible teaches us, of course, about who are the Israelites directly, right? But we're going to go into, the scriptures, man, to find out a little history about our forefathers, their origin, where they come from exactly, and who were their fathers before them. All right, so that we can just get a clear understanding of, you know, who exactly our ancestors are, and the honor and the glory in which we actually, descend from. Okay. So now let's open up to the book of Isaiah, chapter 43. I want Isaiah chapter 43, and I want to read verse 1. Isaiah 43, and I want to start at verse 1. And it says, "But now thus saith the Lord that created thee, O Jacob, and he that formed thee, O Israel, fear not, for I have redeemed thee, and have called thee by thy name, thou art mine." Right? So now we see that this is, of course, this is our God. He's letting us know, man, that He formed us, all right, meaning He's chose us, He created us for a specific purpose. Okay. And as we go back into the law, right? All right, the first five books of Moses, which break down into, of course, the 613 commandments, and break down into, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, right? That composes of what we call the Torah, all right, or the law. So we'll go back into the history, of the law, and we're going to get the origin of the children of Israel, themselves. For the Lord said that He created us, all right, and He formed us, all right. So we're not to fear, because the Lord is going to be the one to redeem us, right? So how did the Lord redeem us the first time? Of course, through the Exodus, right? Our Exodus out of Egypt, our Exodus out of bondage, all right. So just as we crossed the Red Sea, into the wilderness of Sinai, so will we be gathered up from all four corners of the earth, and we will be, how can I put it? And we will be transported to our homeland. All right, we'll be taken there, man, and that's where the building process will begin, the reestablishing of the earth. So we were created for this exact and this very purpose. So now the Lord does, try those who He wants to see if they're worthy or not. So remember, many of your brothers and sisters right now, man, that are in the two-thirds category, man, you know, they're not worthy. All right. But those who are in the one-thirds, the one-third category, those are the ones that will be found worthy to receive the blessings of the kingdom, right? But before that, we just want to make sure and just get an understanding, man, of where we actually come from. All right. So now let's go to the book of Genesis now. All right. Who could tell me what Genesis means? The beginning. All right. Or Bereshith, right? The beginning. Okay. So now the beginning lets us know the origin of what we know as the creation, the origin of the nations, right? Or the Andaluvian civilizations, all right, or your pre-flood civilizations, the after-flood civilizations. It lets us know, about those different aspects of the beginning of, of life and creation itself. All right, how the Lord began to form everything, man. The first men that that the Lord created, all right, the first human beings He created, right, all the way down to when He destroyed the earth, and then when He began to, create or repopulate the entire earth once again, right? How He began to divide and break up the nations. This is what the book of Genesis does show us. So now let's go to the book of Genesis, and let's get our first forefather, right? Let's get the table of, you know what? Yeah, let's get the table of nations. So now let's go to the book of Genesis chapter 10, and I'm gonna start at verse 1. All right. So now this is after the flood had occurred. So now it says here, It says in Genesis chapter 10 and verse 1. Now these are the generations of Noah, the sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And unto them were sons born after the flood. So these are the three sons which Noah had, right? So remember, he was 500 years old when he begat all three of his sons, right? And of course, the flood came when Noah was about 600 years of age, right? So now we read about the first nations that had began to create it, and you read about those out of the children of Japheth, right? So then you read about the children of Ham and how they were they began to multiply and how they began to become civilizations. And now when we drop down and we read verse 21, now we're going to deal with Shem, okay? So then we'll see how the line begins to break down, all right, into our forefathers, all right. So now Shem. So it says, I'm sorry, Genesis chapter 10, and we're on verse 21 now. Let's go down. So now it says, unto Shem also, the father of all the children of Eber, the brother of Japheth the elder, even to him were children born. So even them were children born of him, right? So now all the children that are born of Shem, they will be called uh, Shemitic, okay? So now meaning they would be the descendant of Shem, okay? So now it says, the children of Shem were Elam, Ashur, Arphaxad, Lud, and Aram, right? And then so those were the sons of Shem, okay, the sons in which he had. So it says in the scriptures that he had Arphaxad 2 years after the flood. All right. So now let's continue. Now the children of Shem were Elam, Ashur, Arphaxad, Lud, and Aram. And the children of Aram were Uz, Hul, Gathar, and Mash. And Arphaxad begat Salah, and Salah begat Eber, right? So we know that Eber is who? We're about to find out. And he says, so it says, and Salah begat Eber, and unto Eber were born two sons, and the name of one was Peleg, for in his days was the earth divided, and his brother's name was Joktan, right? So remember, Eber is the father of all of the children of or excuse me, he's the father of the children of the Hebrews, right? So remember, he carried on what we call the Hebrew language. This is why, Abraham was still able to speak it, and of course, his descendants after him. All right. So we see that Eber is the progenitor of the Hebrew speaking peoples. All right, as it goes down. So he was one of the sons of Shem. Okay, or he was the son of he was the grandson of Arphaxad, the son of Salah, right? So now he had two sons, Peleg, and it says, for in his days was the earth divided, and his brother was Joktan. All right, Joktan, okay, he was basically they were what you would call the nomadic peoples of what we know as ancient Arabia. All right. So now it says, so then you read about the children of Joktan in verse 26. All right. So now we're going to drop down, and of course, we're going to jump to chapter 11. We're going to jump to chapter 11. So now, chapter 11, of course. So now dealing with chapter 11, you're dealing with the building of the civilizations after the flood. All right. So there were civilizations that were being built. Okay, after the flood. So now it says, I'm gonna start in chapter 11 and verse 1. Now it says, and the whole earth was of one language and of one speech. So as it's saying, as the world being of one language and of one speech, it's talking about the Hebrew language. All right, the world all spoke one speech at one point, and that was the language of the Hebrews, because the languages had not been confounded as of yet. All right. So, as the nations began to multiply, all right, once they left the mountain of Ararat and they began to dwell in the plain towards the east called Shinar, and they began to multiply. Remember, they came under a one world order under who we know as Nimrod. He's supposed to be the first one world ruler. All right, he had the first one world order. So he was over all peoples, all kindreds, and all tongues at this particular time in Genesis chapter 11. Okay, so all the nations they were on one accord, and now they began to do much evil and much wickedness, right, in the sight of the Lord. And this is why he began to confound all of the languages. This is why you have many different languages, even until this very day. All right, the Lord began to break up the languages. Okay, so now we're going to drop down, and we're going to read verse 25. Okay, so now we're going to get into the patriarch Abraham. So now it says, and Nahor lived after he begat Terah 119 years and begat sons and daughter. And Terah lived 70 years and begat Abraham, Nahor, and Haran. Now these are the generations of Terah. Terah begat Abraham, Nahor, and Haran begat Lot. And it says, and Haran died before his father Terah in the land of of his nativity in Ur of the Chaldees. And Abraham and Nahor took them wives, and the name of Abraham's wife was Sarai, and the name of Nahor's wife was Milcah, and the father of Milcah, and the father of Iscah. And Sarah was barren, and she had no children. And Terah took Abram his son, and Lot the son of Haran, his son, his grandson, and Sarah his daughter-in-law, and his sons Abraham's wife, or Abram's wife, excuse me. And they went forth with them from Ur of the Chaldees to go into the land of Canaan, and they came unto Haran and dwelt there. And the days of Terah were 205 years, and Terah died in Haran. Right. So now this is dealing with the going from Eber all the way down to Terah, going all the way down to Abraham. All right. So now you see that Abraham was being called out of the land of his nativity, um, or out of the land amongst his kindred by the Most High. Right. So Abraham at this time he was aware he was in what they would call the land of Haran or Syria. All right. That's where he dwelled. All right. So then the Most High called him from there. And then, as you can see, he went into the land of Canaan. All right. Abraham conceived seed, right, which was his son Isaac. Okay. And then Isaac, he conceived seed and had his wives conceived seed, and they had two sons, Jacob and Esau, right? So we know Esau is the progenitor of who? Your Caucasian people, right? And we see Jacob is the progenitor of who? The Israelites, all right? So now let's go to real quick, let's go to Genesis chapter 25. And we're gonna get verse 20, we're gonna start at verse 23. So Genesis chapter 25, verse 23. And it says, and the Lord said unto her, Rebekah, two nations are in thy womb, and two manner of people shall be separated from thy bowels, and one people shall be stronger than the other people, and the elder shall serve the younger. Right. So this is all in what the Most High is revealing to Rebekah at this time. All right. So he's revealing to her that she's going to give birth to two nations, right? Two nations that are going to have two separate mannerisms. They're going to be separated from her bowels, right? So then she says, one people are going to be stronger than the other, right? And the elder is going to serve the younger. So we know that Esau came out first. So then Esau will be the one to serve his brother Jacob. So it said that Jacob's hand held Esau's heel, right? So that signified that, of course, Esau would begin to come into power, and then Jacob will come into power after Esau. All right. So, and this would be the futuristic prophecy, of course, that is going to happen now, even in our time, right? As Esau's kingdom is coming down, we see that our kingdom is going to come up, right? Or the kingdom of Christ is going to come up. Okay. So, in the in as far as dealing with Christ, there's not going to be any type of nation coming up after him, right? That's it. Once Christ comes into power, once Israel is in this in its holy form. That's it. All right. So of course, again, so of course, that's just showing you. All right, I just wanted to bring that out as far as just to show that these two children that Rebecca was going to have were going to be two nations. All right, two nations. All right, two different peoples that were going to be born. All right, you see, one was born without melanin to where you could see the blood through his skin. The other came out regular. All right, meaning he was a dark. He was going to be a dark skin complexion. All right. So then you guys can definitely read the rest of that for yourselves. So now let's go to chapter 20. We'll start at chapter 20. We'll go to chapter 28. Let's get a little bit of that. So chapter 28, we're going to read verse 1. So now it says, and Isaac called Jacob and blessed him and charged him and said unto him, thou shalt not take a wife of the daughters of Canaan, right? Why was Jacob forbidden to take a daughter of the Canaanites? Right, good. So his father Isaac did not want him to take a wife of another nation, all right, especially the Canaanites, all right. He wanted his son to have a wife of his own kindred, of his own bloodline, all right. So now let's continue reading on. So it says, arise and go to Padan Aram to the house of Bethel, thy mother's father, and take thee a wife from this of the daughters of Laban, thy mother's brother. Right. So of course he's telling him go take a wife of your mother's brothers, right? Of your mother's brother's daughter. Okay. So now God Almighty bless thee and make thee fruitful and multiply, that thou mayest be a multitude of people, right? So of course his father blessed him to become a great nation. All right. So remember, the blessing was bestowed upon him. So remember, Esau sold his birthright to Jacob, and now Jacob, all the rights that pertain to Esau being the firstborn, the blessings and all of that, now it was given to Jacob. So now you see that Jacob would now be the chosen, would now be elected as the chosen people of the Lord. Okay, so now it says in verse 4, and give thee blessing of Abraham to thee and to thy seed with thee, that thou mayest inherit the land wherein thou art a stranger, which God gave unto Abraham. So the land, so that he would be able to inherit the land that was given to his father Abraham. All right. So this is why Jacob was to go to Padan Aram and pick him out a wife, so that he could become blessed and become this great and powerful multitude that his father is speaking about. So remember, this was prophecy. All of this was prophecy. This was prophecy that was known. All right. So remember, they were destined for great things. Okay. Jacob was destined for great things, just as Esau was destined, what I'm saying, to do, many incredible things, and also receive a very, very, powerful judgment as well. All right. So now, so then it says, so now verse 5. So it says, and Isaac sent away Jacob, and he went to Padan Aram unto Laban, the son of Bethuel, the Syrian, the brother of Rebekah, Jacob and Esau's mother. And when Esau saw that Isaac blessed Jacob and sent him away to Padan Aram to take him a wife from thence, and that as he had blessed him, he gave him a charge, saying, thou shalt not take a wife of the daughters of Canaan. And that Jacob obeyed his father and his mother, and was gone to Padan Aram. And Esau, seeing that the daughters of Canaan pleased not Isaac his father, then went Esau unto Ishmael and took unto the wives which he had. And he says, Mahalath, the daughter of Ishmael, Abraham's son, the sister of Nebajoth, to be his wife. So Esau thought he could please his father, right, by taking one of his father's kindred, right? So of course he took one of his uncle's daughters, right, or his uncle's son's daughter. All right. So now, let's drop down and read verse. Let's drop down and read verse. Let's go to chapter 29 and let's hit verse. Let's hit verse 10. All right. So we're just kind of skipping through the history. All right. So it's a lot to cover, but we're just going to go. We're going to just we're going to get through it as much as we can as possible. All right. So it says, and it came to pass when Jacob saw Rachel, the daughter of Laban, his mother's brother, and the sheep of Laban, his mother's brother, that Jacob went near and rolled the stone from the well's mouth and watered the flock of Laban, his mother's brother. And Jacob kissed Rachel and lifted up his voice and wept. And Jacob told Rachel that he was her father's brother, her father's brothers. Excuse me. And Jacob told Rachel that he was her father's brother, and that he was Rebekah's son, as she ran and told her father. Ran and told her father, and it came to pass when Laban heard the tidings of Jacob, his sister's son, so his nephew, that he ran to meet him and embraced him and kissed him and brought him to his house. And he told Laban all these things. And Laban said to him, surely thou art my bone and my flesh. And he abode with him a space of a month. All right. So he was there for about a space of a month once he arrived. Okay. So then you see that, of course, they came into agreement for the dowry, right? So Jacob would serve for for Rachel. So then he ended up getting Leah instead. So Laban beguiled him, and he ended up marrying Leah. All right. Yes.
So, so what is this? Because I remember this came up a couple of times. If kissing makes you married. So this clears that up, doesn't it? Because it doesn't say after you kiss that they became husband and wife.
No, you're right. Kissing, it doesn't officiate the situation. All right. So I mean, it depends on what type of kiss it was too. You know what I mean? You have the more so the deep, intimate, the husband and wife type of kiss. You know what I mean? Then you have the kiss on the cheek. You know what I mean? So I mean, remember Judas kissed Christ on the cheek. That was a kiss of betrayal. You know, I mean, you'll read many in certain instances in the scripture, man, where brothers they may have gave a peck on the cheek. You know what I mean? Just out of love, sincerity. You know, so like you really love somebody like that, man. Yeah, you'll do that. You know what I mean? You just don't flat out kiss them and like they say, slob them up and all of that. No, you know what I mean? No, men don't do that. All right. So, so now we're gonna drop down and we're gonna read we're gonna start at verse 21, and now you're gonna see when Jacob began to have his sons. All right. So now Jacob had two wives. Okay. So the name of the first wife was Leah, and the name of his second wife was Rachel. Rachel was his favorite wife. All right. So now, verse 21, and Jacob said unto Laban, give me my wife, and my days are fulfilled, that I may go in unto her. And Laban gathered together all the men of the place and made a feast. And it came to pass in the evening, he took Leah, his daughter, and brought her to him, and he went in unto her. And Laban gave unto his daughter Leah Zilpah, his maid, for a handmaid. All right, so that was his daughter's help. Okay, so now this the servant girl, she would help Leah with all of with all of the things around the house, the children, so on and so forth. All right, that was her gift. That was uh her gift. All right, from her father. So it says, and it came to pass that in the morning, behold, it was Leah, and he said to Laban, what is this that thou hast done unto me? Did not I serve thee for Rachel? Wherefore then thou hast beguiled me? So we like, why did you deceive me, man? I served you for Rachel. He served 7 years for Rachel. So it says, and Laban said, it must not be done so in our country to give the younger before the firstborn. Fulfill her week, and we will give thee this also for the service which thou shalt serve with me yet 7 other years. And Jacob did so and fulfilled her week, and he gave him Rachel, his daughter, to wife also. So Laban had no problem giving away both of his daughters, all right, to be this man's wife, to be, to be this man's, the wives of this man, all right. So now it says, and Laban gave Rachel his daughter Bilhah, the handmaiden, to, and he went in also unto Rachel, and he loved also Rachel more than Leah, and served with him yet 7 other years. That's going into a whole other topic. We'll talk about that later. So it says, and when the Lord saw that Leah was hated, he opened her womb, but Rachel was barren, right? And Leah conceived and bare a son, and she called his name Reuben, for she said, surely the Lord hath looked upon my affliction. Now therefore my husband will love me. All right. So also tells you a lot about the relationship between Leah and also her husband Jacob too. Like I said, we'll go into that stuff at a later time as well. So then, and she conceived again and bare a son, and said, because the Lord hath heard that I was hated, he hath therefore given me this son also, and she called his name Simeon, right? So now you see these are the first two sons, all right? You have Reuben, which is Seah's son, and you have Simeon, right? Which is Herd, okay? And it says, and she conceived again and bare a son, and said, now this time will my husband be joined unto me, because I have borne him 3 sons. Therefore was his name called Levi. So now you see that this is the third son that came about. So now remember, it said that the Lord opened up Leah's womb, but Rachel's womb was closed, right? Because she was the less favored wife. All right. So now she has 3 sons. She has Reuben, Simeon, and Levi. And now she's going to conceive again, and you're going to see the fourth born son. Okay. So now it says, and she conceived again and bare a son, and she said, now will I praise the Lord. Therefore, she called his name Judah and left bearing. So she left bearing for a while. So now she had her fourth born son, and his name was Judah. Okay. So now she has 4 sons now that have been born. All right. To Jacob at this time. And Rachel has no children now. So now, so it says she left off bearing. Um, so it says, I'm sorry, hold on. So it says that she left off bearing, right? So now you see when we go to chapter 30, then you're going to get the rest of the sons, all right, that she conceived. Okay. So now let's go to chapter 31 and start at verse 1. And when Rachel saw she was barren, Jacob had no children. Rachel envied her sister and said unto Jacob, give me children, or else I'll die. And Jacob's anger was kindled against Rachel, and he said, am I in God's stead? Who am I who hath withheld from thee the fruit of thy womb? So he was like, man, am I the most high? Right? Can I give you children? Who has withheld your womb? Right? So now it says, and she said, behold, my maid Bilhah, go in unto her, and she shall bear upon my knees, that I may also have children by her. So now she was like, go into Miami. She's going to be a surrogate for me. So I want you to have children by her. All right. So this is what women did in biblical times. They could not have children or by their husband. They went and they got a surrogate. All right. So now, and she gave Bilhah her handmaid to wife, and Jacob went in unto her. And Bilhah conceived and bare Jacob a son. And Rachel said, God hath judged me, and have also heard my voice, and have given me a son. Therefore called she his name Dan. All right. So what does Dan's name mean? Judgment. All right. So that's what it's like. The Lord has judged me. Okay. So now it says, and now this now Dan was the son of who? What handmaid? Bilhah, good. So now Bilhah, Rachel's maid, conceived again and bare Jacob a second son. And Rachel said, with great wrestling have I wrestled with my sister, and I have prevailed. And she called his name Naphtali, right? So now she has two sons, right? That were born by her handmaid. Okay. So she has Dan and now she has Naphtali. All right. So now these are the two sons of Bilhah. Okay. So now watch what Leah does now. When Leah saw that she had left bearing, she took Zilpah, her handmaid, and gave her Jacob to wife. And Zilpah, Leah's handmaid, bare Jacob a son, and Leah said, a troop cometh. And she called his name Gad. All right, so now you see that these are going to be the sons of Zilpah now. Okay, so now the first son that she had was, his name is Gad now. So now Leah has how many sons? She has five sons now, all right? So she had Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah. Now she has Gad, okay? We're going to read about the next son, all right? And you see that Rachel has two now, okay? Dan and Naphtali. So now it says, so now, and Zilpah, Leah's handmaid, bare Jacob a second son, and Leah said, happy am I, for the daughters will call me blessed. And she called his name Asher. All right. So now Asher now has been born. So now that is Leah's what? Sixth son. Okay. So now you see that how many sons have been born now? You see six plus the two, that's what? Eight sons now. All right. So now you have the progenitor of you have eight the progenitor of eight men who will now be the progenitor of the first eight tribes, right? Of Israel. So now we're going to get into the rest of them. So now, you see. So now we're going to go into the next tribe. So we're going to drop down. And we're going to read verse 18, and it says, "And Leah said, God hath given me hire, because I have given my maiden to my husband, and she called his name Issachar." Right, and Leah conceived again and bare Jacob the sixth son. And Leah said, God hath endured me with a good dowry. Now will my husband dwell with me, because I have borne him six sons. And she called his name Zebulun. All right, Zebulun. Okay. So now she had naturally how many sons? She had six sons naturally. All right. And then she had two by her handmaid. Okay. So now, as you can see, so now she has Issachar, and now she has now she has Zebulon. All right. So now, and it says in verse 21, and afterwards she bare a daughter and called her name Dinah. All right. Dinah means judgment as well. So it says, and God remembered Rachel, and God hearkened to her and opened her womb, and she conceived and bare a son, and said, God hath taken away my reproach. And she called his name Joseph, and said, the Lord shall add to me another son. Right? So now these are the sons of so now these are the sons, right, that are now been born, and one daughter has been born to Jacob. All right. So of course, how many persons now do we have? All right. So Leah has six sons plus the two, so that was eight. Then she had what? Then her handmaid had two more, right? So that's what? So that's 10, right? So then you have Leah, of course, who had Joseph, right? So then Joseph would have been what? 11. All right. If you have all of them together. So then you'll see the last son that was born was who? Was Benjamin. All right. So now let's go to the book of Genesis chapter 35 now. Chapter 35, and we're going to get verse 10, I believe. Nope. Wait a minute. verse 18. So so before the birth of Benjamin, you'll see that Jacob had his name changed. So his name was changed to Israel. We're going to get that in just a second. All right. So actually, let's jump up real quick and let's read verse. Let's start at verse 9. All right, chapter 35 and verse 9. So let's get that real quick. And it says, "And God appeared unto Jacob again when he came out of Paddan Aram, and blessed him. And God said unto him, Thy name is Jacob. Thy name shall not be called any more Jacob, but Israel shall be thy name." And he called his name Israel, right? What does Israel mean? A prince of power, all right? As a prince, thou hast power, right? With both God and men, okay? So now it says, "And God said unto him, I am God Almighty. Be fruitful and multiply. A nation and a company of nations shall be of thee, and kings shall come out of thy loins." Right. So now this is specifically being said to Israel himself. All right. Remember, his name is no longer called Jacob, but is now Israel. All right. He's been surnamed Israel. So now he says, "Be fruitful and multiply. A nation and a company of nations shall come of thee, nations shall be of thee, and kings shall come out of thy loins." So now you see the kings that came out of his loins. We read about those kings, right? In the book of in First Samuel, right? The first king that came out of Saul. Then you had David and Solomon. Then before that, you had the rulers or the men and the men who were called the judges, right? You know, and then of course the various nations, or you know what I'm saying, that descend from Israel that we read about in history, throughout the diaspora, the many names that Israel went by, or the nations called, you know what I'm saying, our forefathers, by different names. So of course, you know, this this what the Most High said really did happen. All right. So now it says, "And the land which I gave Abraham and Isaac to thee will to thee I will give it, and to thy seed after thee will I give the land." And God went up from him in a place where he talked with him. Okay. So now that did come to pass, all right. So the land was given unto Jacob's seed, or Israel's seed. All right. So now let's drop down and get the last son. All right. So now it says, we're going to read verse 16. "And they journeyed from Bethel, and there was but a little ways to go to Ephrath, and Rachel travailed." Excuse me. So it says, "And Rachel travailed, and she had hard labor. And it came to pass, when she was in hard labor, that the midwife said unto her, Fear not, thou shalt have this son also. And it came to pass, as her soul was departing from her, so she was dying, for she died, that she called his name Ben Oni. But his father called him Benjamin," right? "And Rachel died and was buried in the way of Ephrath, which is Bethlehem." So Rachel was buried in what we call Bethlehem. So you see that she named him Benoni, right? But his father gave him the name Benjamin, right? Meaning what? What does Benjamin name mean? Son of the right. All right. So now you see that these are the 12 tribes, right? So these are the 12 sons of Jacob. Okay. So then you see when Joseph had his sons. All right. Remember, they took the place of two tribes. All right. So remember, Levi was not counted as a tribe. Okay. You could also go to the PowerPoint, the slavery of the children of Israel, and I'll also break it down there. All right, and you'll be able to see it. Who the tribes are, and so on and so forth. Right. So Levi was no longer counted as a tribe; they were set apart. Then you had Ephraim and Manasseh. that would take that took basically took Levi's place. All right, and then of course, so then it would be a total 12. All right, so there was no 13th tribe because Levi would not be considered a tribe. All right, that with inheritance that is. Okay, so now, so then later on, it changed up again to where Dan, Dan became assimilated among some other tribes. But then of course, Levi, he officially, took Dan's place, and then the 12 tribe, the tribes changed. Okay, so so of course, those are the sons of the tribe. So now let's get the 12 tribes officially. All right. So now let's go to the book of let's hit Exodus chapter 1. All right, Exodus chapter 1. So now, let's get verse 1. So now these are the names of the children of Israel which came into Egypt. Every man in his household came with Jacob, Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, and Benjamin, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, and Asher. And all the souls that came out of the loins of Jacob were 70 souls, for Joseph was already, for Joseph was in Egypt already. Excuse me. And Joseph died, and all his brethren died, and all that generation. And the children of Israel were fruitful and increased abundantly and multiplied and waxed exceedingly mighty, and the land was filled with them. Right. So as they were in Egypt and as they dwelt there, you know, they increased in number. All right, and they were basically very fruitful in the land of Egypt. All right, so they dwelt in what we call the land of Goshen. All right, which was in what they call Lower Egypt. All right, so that's where they dwell. So now you see that as they began to become fruitful and multiply, the Egyptians plotted against them. They began to oppress the children of Israel. They began to try all types of different ways to destroy the Israelites and cause them to decrease in number. They tried to kill the children off. They tried to they basically tried to enslave. They did enslave them, right? Kill them through hard labor and bondage, drugs, alcohol, whatever you could think of. The Egyptians tried it. All right, same things that you see that America's trying. The Egyptians tried it before. All right, and it to no avail. It did not work. Okay, they increased more in number and in size, the more that they afflict them, the more that the children of Israel began to grow. All right. So now, of course, let's take a look. Let's take a look at some prophecy concerning the children of Israel, right? Because we do know, man, that of course our fathers, they were in Egypt. Of course, we know that the Israelites they did exist, all right. But there were certain prophecies, man, in the Bible, man, that shows us, man, where Israelites would be today. So, of course, again, you can go back to those chapters and you can look up the sons of Jacob, and you can see the tribes in which definitely came out of the land of went into the land of Egypt, and then you could go into the book of Numbers and also see the number of the tribe or the name of the tribes that did come out of the land of Egypt, and the number of the camp and all of that stuff, man. How their numbers increased, all of that. All right. The men that were apt and prepared to go forth to war to take the promised land, and how the Most High had to purge, the children of Israel. Go ahead and definitely check out the lesson on YouTube dealing with the 40 years in the wilderness. All right, it's a good lesson. So now let's open up to the book of Luke real quick. All right, let's go to the book of Luke chapter 21, and let's hit verse 20. To the book of Luke chapter 21, let's hit verse 20. So now this is pertaining to the prophecy, right, of the destruction of the temple, and of course where our fathers would be scattered at. All right. So now let's check this out. So now it says in the book of Luke chapter 21, 1, and I'm gonna start at verse 20. Now it says, "When ye shall see Jerusalem compassed with armies, then know that the desolation thereof is nigh." Right. So know that the desolation thereof is near. So now, of course, we know that this is that Christ is talking about, you know, the Romans, right, compassing the walls of Jerusalem, right, and preparing to destroy it. Okay. So now it says, "And let them which are in Judea flee to the mountains, and let them which are in the midst of it depart out, and let them that are in the countries enter thereinto." All right, excuse me, "and let not them which are in the countries enter thereinto." So Christ is giving warning, man, about what is to come. Okay, so he's literally warning the Jews, man, y'all better get ready. All right, so this was prophesied in the book of Daniel, chapter 9. All right, that that Jerusalem was going to be destroyed, and also in the book of Ezekiel, chapter 4 and chapter 5. So you definitely want to write those chapters down. Right, that is prophecy of the destruction of Jerusalem. Okay, so remember, Ezekiel is not witnessing, Jerusalem being destroyed in 586. Jerusalem had long been destroyed, right? The temple had long been destroyed and put down. The walls had been broken down in 586, right? So you're talking about years later during the Babylonian captivity. So Jews are in Babylon already. So when you read Ezekiel 4 and Ezekiel 5, that is talking about the future prophecy of the destruction of Jerusalem. All right. So I also go into a little bit of that in the children of the slavery of the children of Israel PowerPoint. All right, which you can go check out. So now we're talking about 70 AD, when the desolation of the Jews had happened. All right, so now, of course, if you have your book here, From Babylon to Timbuktu, definitely a good book. Advise you to to definitely read it and get it, because it'll let you know about the destruction of of the second temple. All right, so now in 70 AD, and what happened to many of the Jews, that were caught up in the siege. All right. So now let's go there real quick. You have the page number is page 84. All right. So now it says here, in 65 BC, the Roman armies under General Pompey captured Jerusalem. In 70 AD, Vespasian and his son Titus, excuse me, in 70 AD, Vespasian and his son Titus put it into the Jewish state with great slaughter, right? So in 65 BC, it says the Roman armies under Pompey captured Jerusalem. So that's when Jerusalem was captured or taken over and became a part of the Roman provinces, all right? So now he says in 70 AD, Vespasian and his son Titus put an end to the Jewish state. So they basically put an end to the independence of the Jews, right? So whatever little freedom that the Jews had, they completely crushed it. All right. They put an end to it. All right. Israel being a state, they crushed it. Okay. So it says with great slaughter. So they slaughtered many of the Jews. Okay. So remember, it was the siege. All right. So you can also go onto the website, man, and you can see the lesson that I did on the siege of 70 AD as well, and it explains the number. All right. So it says almost 1,600,000 Jews, were pretty much killed in the siege, and almost what 97,000 Israelites were taken captive and taken to Rome to fight, in their arenas, man, and participate in, their sports. All right, their gladiatorial sports. Excuse me. So then it says here. So it says during the period of military governors of Palestine, many outrages and atrocities were committed against the residue of the people. So the remnant of the people that were there, that were left, there were many crimes, man, that were committed against them. During the period from Pompey to Julius, it has been estimated that over 1 million Jews fled into Africa, fleeing from Roman persecution and slavery. So over 1 million Jews, that's over a 38-year period, man, that Jews were fleeing from Pompey to Julius. 1 million Jews fled into Africa. So there were many Jews that were migrating into Africa, right, to escape the persecution of the Romans, right, the high taxation and all of that. Okay. So it says, fleeing from Roman persecution and slavery, the slave markets were full of black Jewish slaves. So many of the Roman slave markets, man, were full of black Israelites. full of black Israelites. Okay, so this is why you see Rome had such a high influx, man, of Hebrews there. Okay, so now, so this was the destruction of this was going into the destruction of Jerusalem. So that's why when you go back to the scripture in verse 21, where it says, "And let them which are in Judea flee into the mountains." Well, where are the mountains? He's talking about the mountains. He's talking about fleeing into Africa. All right. So remember, many of our fathers, that's what they did, man. They fled to the mountains for safety and security. All right. So they took the high ground. Okay. So now, so then in verse 22 it says, "For these be the days of vengeance, that all things which are written may be fulfilled." So this had to be fulfilled because this was prophecy that was being fulfilled about the destruction of, of the holy city. All right, which I stated earlier, which is mentioned in the book of Daniel, chapter 9, and verses 27 through 29, I believe. So now go to the book of Deuteronomy now, chapter 28. Deuteronomy chapter 28. So these are the curses, right? The curses of, or the curses that will befall our people. Okay. So remember, 70 AD, that was just one of them. All right. So that was just one of them. That was a prophecy that occurred. So now, we got to go into, some of the history, right? So like I said, man, I'm just going into bits and pieces of it. All right. So we see that the Jews they fled into Africa. The parts of Africa that they fled in, like I said, definitely go check out, man, the slavery of the children of Israel, the slavery of the children of Israel, and in the PowerPoint I show you exactly where, the Jews had went in those parts of Africa. All right, so like what you would call like you know what they call it Togo, Benin, modern day Benin, Togo, Cote d'Ivoire, Mali, all of those different places, man. The Jews were located. Nigeria, you know, so Chad. So those are different places in West Africa that Israelites were located, and that's where they migrated, and then they were taken into slavery. All right. So now let's read this in the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 20, 28, and I want to give verse 68. All right. Many of you may be very familiar with this prophecy, but definitely, refamiliarize yourself with it. All right. When you definitely try to break people down about, the history of slavery. All right. That happened to who the so-called African Americans, right? So now it says in the book of Deuteronomy 28 and verse 68, "And the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships." So now that's the key there. All right, so understand, he said, "The Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships." So remember, we were in Egypt that we walked into Egypt at first, right? So now he's talking about that we will return to Egypt in an entirely different manner. All right, as our forefathers lived in Egypt, remember, as we grew and multiplied into a nation, the Egyptians they enslaved us, right? So now, uh, when we go back to Egypt, we will go back or enter Egypt in an entirely different manner. All right. So now the Lord has shown us that we will go back in by way of ship. So now when you think about the ships, right? So now what people do you know went into bondage, right? And it's recorded in history that is a fact that went into bondage by way of cargo, by way of ship, right? The so-called Africans, right, from West Africa. Okay, so they went into bondage, by way of ship. Okay, yes. Okay, so they went into bondage by way of ship. So now, who were these people? Well, of course, they were the Israelites or the children of Israel. All right. So now this is a prophecy that's going to show us, the process that our fathers went through. Okay, in slavery. So it says, "And the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships by the way whereof I spake unto thee. Thou shalt see it no more again. And there you shall be sold unto your enemies for bondsmen and bondwomen." Right. So here is the Lord said that we will be sold unto our enemies. Well, who are our enemies? When you look at the enemies of the children of Israel, you go to the book of Psalms, chapter 83, and it shows you the enemies of the children of Israel. Right, real quick, let's go there. The book of Psalms 83. Psalms 83, and I'm gonna start at I'm gonna get the enemies. So Psalms 83 and verse I'll start at verse verse 4. I'll start at verse 4. So it says, and they have said, come and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance. For they have consented together in one consent, and they are confederate against thee. The tabernacles of Edom, and the Ishmaelites, and the Moabites, the Hagarenes, Gebal, the Ammonites, the Amalekites, and the Philistines, with the inhabitants of Tyre, right? So now we're showing you that, of course, the main culprits are your children of Edom. You have your Ishmaelites, which are your Arabs. You got your Moabites, which are your Chinese, your Hagarenes, your Gebalites, all right? So your Africans, your Edomites, your so-called Japanese, your Ammonites, your Amalekites, your Jewish, your Jewish people. And he says the Philistines, another Hamitic nation, and then Tyre, another Hamitic nation. So you see the culprits, right? Basically, as it shows in the history, the Arabs, the Africans, and the Caucasians, they all had a hand in the slavery of the children of Israel. So those were our enemies that we were sold to. So it says, and ye shall be sold unto your enemies for bondsmen, meaning slave men and slave women, and no man shall buy you. All right. So meaning that no man shall be able to to save us, okay, out of our captivity that we're in, all right. So you see the same thing happen to the 10 tribes of Israel as well, right? The Lord said in the book of Hosea, chapter 8 and 13, that they will return to Egypt again, all right. So even the 10 tribes will go back into bondage in Egypt, all right. So where is this Egypt that the Bible's talking about? Well, let's hit the book of Revelations real quick. Revelation chapter 11 and verse 8. Revelation chapter 11 and verse 8. Let's see what the Bible calls the place of our captivity. And it says, I'm gonna start at verse 7. So it says, and when they shall finish their testimony, the beast that ascendeth out of the bottomless pit shall make war against them and shall overcome them and kill them. So this is the beast that is talking about that ascended out of the bottomless pit, which is your Caucasian race, all right, which are your Edomites. Okay. They would be the ones to ascend out of bondage, okay, and they would make war with them, all right, talking about the Israelites, and it says, and overcome them and kill them. So remember, like say for instance the Negro Question Part 4, the Mission Link. That's one of the books that I'm reading, and it's going into like how the white Englishmen began to kick many of the black Irish, right, who are the Israelites, began to kick them out, right? They murdered, what I'm saying, thousands of them. They put them on ships, right, and sent them over here to the Americas. You see, put them on ships, send them over here to the Americas, confiscated their land, and then began to take the land for themselves. And they took the names, right, of those people that were originally there for themselves. All right. So they called themselves by the names which were rightfully ours. All right. So then he says, and their dead bodies shall lie in the streets of the great city which is America, which is spiritually called Sodom and Egypt, right? Why is it Sodom and Egypt? Because of all the immoral acts that are going on here in America, the idolatry, the satanic worship, the homosexuality, so on and so forth, right? And then Egypt, right? Egypt was the place of bondage for the children of Israel. So when he says, where also our Lord was crucified, okay? Where it says, where also our Lord was crucified. So now, and it says, so now this is where it's showing you where the children of Israel will be located. All right. So remember, spiritually Sodom and Egypt. Then of course, remember the Lord said that we were going to go back to Egypt. Now let's hit Ezekiel real quick. Ezekiel chapter 19. Ezekiel chapter 19, and of course I want verse 4. And it says, the nations also heard of him. He was taken in their pit, and they brought him with chains unto the land of Egypt. So, of course, it said the nations, right? So, with your European, your Hamitic, and then, of course, your Ishmaelites or your Arab, right? Your Arabs, they've heard of him, Israel, and he was taken into their pit. Okay. And it says, and they brought him with chains unto the land of Egypt. Well, what is the land of Egypt mean in America? They brought him over here to the Americas to serve out bondage and captivity. All right. So, so our fathers, man, as the Bible shows us, of course, they're over here. They're over here, right? How we got over here, you know, to what we call the Americas, right? Through slavery and bondage. Okay. So of course the 12 tribes went into captivity. All right. So are there any questions about that? Any questions about that? All right, all right. So there's more, but of course we've hit our time. So you can write these down. So you can go to Genesis, you can write down Genesis chapter 15 and verse 13. That's dealing with the 400 years of slavery. Again, you can also go to the PowerPoint, slavery of the children of Israel, and watch that. Um, Revelation chapter 18, that's dealing with the evils of America. Deuteronomy 28:64, that's dealing with the Israelites being scattered, mainly in the Western Hemisphere. Then you got Joel chapter 3, 1 through 6, showing how our people were basically put on auction blocks and were cast lots for. Yeah, chapter 3, verses 1 through 6. Deuteronomy 28, 49 through 50. The nations from afar, that's dealing with the European nations and how they came, and how they began to enslave. All right, not just America, but first through the Middle Passage, right, West Indies, and then they began to take them to America and South America. All right, so that's why I say the majority of our people are in South America. You know what I'm saying? And then you have a remnant in Central America. Then of course, then the rest of us are up here in North America. All right. So now so when we already did Psalm 83, then of course, read the Willie Lynch letter. All right. Definitely read the Willie Lynch letter. If you don't have it, get print it out, make some copies. Read the Willie Lynch letter. Huh? I mean, I have a book. I have a book on the Willie Lynch letter, a little booklet. But definitely go and read it, man, because it does break down a lot of. It does have a lot of scriptural points to it that break down, man, the condition of our people today. All right. So if there are no further questions about that, definitely go back over those chapters, and read them for yourselves, get acquainted with them, get acquainted with who the 12 tribes are, and of course, go back and watch the PowerPoint as well, and receive some edification. All right. So with that, if there's no further questions, man, we'll close out. For those online, I'll definitely see you tomorrow for our closing Sabbath service. And with that, we will say shalom. All right. So for us here, We'll rise, we'll face the east, and we'll send prayer. I know y'all tired. That's why I stopped. Right now, they probably tired of the moment.